Hey, quick heads up before we dive in. The Chiefs just made a significant roster move ahead of Week 8. I'll keep this tight and then break down exactly what it means for the team. If you want more in-depth breakdowns like this, hit that subscribe button. We're pushing hard to reach 6,000 subscribers, and your support really helps the channel grow. Also, give the video a like if you want more roster reaction content. Here's the quick version. The Chiefs placed rookie defensive tackle Omar Norman Lott on injured reserve after suffering a torn ACL, and they signed practice squad cornerback Kevin Nolles to the active roster. That announcement came from the team on October 21st. I don't want to sugarcoat it. Losing Norman Lott is a real blow. He was a second-round pick this year who had quickly become a part of the rotation on the interior. Through his first 5 games, he wasn't piling up huge stats. The box score shows about 1.0 sack and 1 tackle for loss. But his real value was the role he played plugging gaps, setting the tone, and showing the kind of developmental upside you pick a second-round interior defender for. That development track now pauses for the season while the team waits on recovery. On the flip side, Kevin Nolles' promotion is exactly the kind of small, smart move the Chiefs make when something unexpected happens. Nolles is a 22-year-old undrafted rookie who had earned several practice squad elevations earlier in the season and has primarily contributed on special teams so far. That's important. Special teams trust from someone like Dave Toub can be the quickest path from the practice squad to a real, useful role on game day. Expect his first snaps to be in those tight, high-leverage special teams moments while the coaches figure out the defensive line rotation. So where does that leave the team right now? Immediately, the active roster loses a young D-tackle who was being groomed, and they add a corner who's more of a special teams and depth play than a like-for-like replacement. The front office and coaching staff now have to decide whether to pull from the practice squad for interior help, sign a veteran free agent, or reroute existing pieces into heavier interior roles. I'll map out the most likely options in the next chapter. Quick interaction for you. I want to know how you see this. Does Norman Lott's injury make you worry about the Chiefs' interior defensive depth? Type yes or no in the comments right now. And while you're there, if you think the Chiefs should sign an experienced DT this week, vote sign. If you'd rather they promote from the practice squad, vote promote. Before I move on, one last ask. If you're enjoying this style of breakdown, quick, no-nonsense roster news with practical implications, please subscribe. We're trying to hit 6,000 subscribers, and smash that like button so more Chiefs fans find the channel. All right, let's break down what Omar Norman Lott's torn ACL really means for the Chiefs and for him as a rookie. If you've been following this team closely, you know Norman Lott was drafted in the second round of the 2025 NFL Draft, and the expectations were high. He wasn't just another body on the defensive line. The coaches saw him as someone who could develop into a core part of the interior rotation, and the early flashes were promising. Through Week 7, he had been gradually integrated into the defensive line rotation. While the raw stats don't jump off the page, 1 sack, a tackle for loss, a few quarterback pressures, the film told a bigger story. Norman Lott was making the small but crucial plays that help a defense function, setting the edge, absorbing double teams, and keeping gaps clean. He was exactly the kind of player the Chiefs like to develop slowly, giving him exposure while protecting him from overuse. Unfortunately, that development timeline now takes a hit. A torn ACL isn't just a 4 to 6 week injury. This is typically season-ending, especially for a young player adjusting to the NFL's speed and intensity. Recovery for a rookie is not only physical, but also mental. Learning to trust that knee again regaining explosiveness, and reading offensive line schemes under game pressure. For a team in the middle of a competitive season, this means that any hopes of Norman Lott contributing in high-leverage situations this year are effectively over. Now, don't panic. The Chiefs have handled injuries like this before, and their medical staff is among the best in the league. But for fans, it's a signal that the team will likely rely more heavily on veterans and rotational depth over the next few games. Chris Jones, Derek Ananati, and the other interior defenders are going to see increased snaps. That also means younger or less proven options, like Jerry Tillery or Melek Herring, might need to step up in ways that Norman Lott was initially slated to handle. Here's a question for you. Would you rather the Chiefs invest in Norman Lott's long-term development and keep the roster flexible, or bring in a veteran DT to plug the gap now? Drop a comment and type development if you trust the team to build him up over time, or win now if you want immediate help to stay competitive. This kind of input helps other fans see what the community thinks about the front office decisions. And speaking of the front office, this injury also tests Brett Veach and Andy Reid's roster agility. They've earned a reputation for making smart, sometimes under-the-radar moves. That's why Kevin Nolles' elevation to the active roster makes sense. He's ready to contribute in a pinch, even if it's not a like-for-like replacement. It's also why fans should stay patient. Sometimes the short-term impact looks scary, but the long-term plan is still intact. Before we move on to the next chapter, if you're enjoying this level of insight into player development and roster strategy, hit that subscribe button and turn on the bell. Your support helps us keep breaking down these moves week by week. And of course, like the video if you want more behind the scenes, looks at how the Chiefs handle injuries and roster adjustments. All right, let's talk about Kevin Nolles, the player the Chiefs just promoted to the active roster. If you haven't been following the practice squad closely, Nolles might be a new name for you, but he's been quietly making a case for himself since joining the team. He's a 22-year-old undrafted rookie, cornerback, and what stands out about him isn't just his physical tools. It's his work ethic and versatility. Nolles has been a key contributor on the practice squad, showing coaches that he can handle multiple roles. Most of his reps this season came on special teams, and that's often how young players earn trust in Andy Reid's system. Special teams may not grab headlines, but it's a high-pressure environment where mistakes are obvious and every play matters. If you can excel there, the OIB coaching staff knows you can handle bigger responsibilities. Now, with Norman Lott on IR, the Chiefs needed to make a roster adjustment. Kevin Nolles isn't filling the exact gap on the defensive line, but his elevation adds depth to the roster and gives the team flexibility. He's someone who can rotate into sub-packages on defense, especially in nickel and dime situations, and contribute on special teams right away. In short, he's the kind of player you want when injuries hit. Smart, dependable, and ready to make an impact immediately. What should fans watch for in his first game? Expect Nolles to line up primarily on kickoff coverage and punt units, but keep an eye on him in passing situations. The coaches may test him on a few slot snaps or rotational corner assignments. Even if he doesn't rack up big stats, the coach's trust and how he executes on special teams will tell us a lot about whether he has a future in the Chiefs' secondary. Let me throw a quick interaction your way. Do you think Kevin Nolles can stick around past this season, maybe even earn a larger role in the future? Type yes or no in the comments. I want to see what you all think. Also, who's the player you're most excited to see step up this week? Drop that name below. Let's get some discussion going. And of course, if you like these player breakdowns, make sure to smash that like button. It really helps the channel reach more Chiefs fans and keep bringing you the inside scoop. Also, subscribe and hit the bell if you haven't yet. We're chasing 6,000 subscribers, and every new fan counts. In the next chapter, we're going to break down the depth chart implications. Who fills in on the defensive line? What are the realistic moves Brett Veach and the Chiefs might make before Week 8? We'll look at the pros and cons of each option and how the rotation might shake out. Now that we've covered the injury and Kevin Nolles' promotion, let's look at the Chiefs' defensive depth chart and the options the coaching staff has for Week 8. Losing Omar Norman-Lott puts pressure on the interior defensive line, but the Chiefs have some flexibility. At the top of the depth chart, you still have Chris Jones, the anchor of this defense, and Derek Nadi, who can absorb heavy snaps. Beyond them, there's Jerry Tillery, Malik Herring, and a few rotational pieces like Mike Dana, who can slide inside in certain packages. These are the guys who will likely see increased snaps to cover for Norman-Lott's absence. But here's the tricky part. The Chiefs might also look to practice squad elevations or free agent pickups to bolster depth. Players like Zach Pickens, Broderick Martin, or Marlon Tuipulotu could be considered for short-term solutions if snaps need to be managed carefully. Each option has trade-offs. Elevating a practice squad player keeps the focus on team continuity and development, but they may lack real game experience. Signing a free agent could give you a more polished player immediately, but may require extra reps to learn the system. From a coaching perspective, Andy Reid and Steve Spagnuolo have shown in the past that they prefer internal solutions first. That means players already in the system, like Jerry Tillery or Malik Herring, could get more snaps, especially in rotational packages. But Week 8 is coming fast, and sometimes the short-term need pushes a team to bring in veteran help. It all depends on how confident the staff feels about the guys already on the roster. Here's something to think about. Which option would you prefer as a fan? Would you rather the Chiefs promote from the practice squad and trust the system, or sign a veteran to fill the gap? Drop promote or sign in the comments, and let's see what the community thinks. And don't forget, injuries like this often test the team's depth and adaptability. If the Chiefs manage rotations wisely, they can minimize the impact and still have a defense capable of holding opponents in check. But any misstep could create vulnerability on the interior line, something fans will want to monitor closely. Before we close this chapter, a quick CTA. If you're enjoying this detailed roster analysis and want to keep up with every move, subscribe and hit the bell. We're chasing 6,000 subscribers, and your support helps us cover every twist and turn of this Chiefs season. Also, like the video if you think Brett Veach will handle this roster shakeup effectively. In Chapter 5, we'll zoom out and look at the bigger picture, how this injury affects playoff hopes, coaching decisions, and what fans should take away from these moves. It'll tie together all the developments we've covered and leave you with actionable takeaways as a fan. All right, we've walked through the roster shakeup, the injury to Omar Norman-Lott, Kevin Nolles' promotion, and the depth chart implications. Now it's time to zoom out and look at the bigger picture. What this all means for the Chiefs season, coaching, strategy, and you as a fan. First off, losing a young interior defensive lineman isn't ideal, but the Chiefs' core remains strong. Chris Jones anchors the line, Derek Nadi is reliable, and there's still rotational talent behind them. The coaching staff will need to shuffle snaps carefully, but the team isn't suddenly in panic mode. This is about managing depth, not overhauling the defense. From a playoff perspective, Week 8 is important, and this injury is a test of the team's resilience. The good news? The Chiefs have a history of handling injuries smartly. Look back at past seasons. They've navigated missing starters and still found ways to win critical games. That mindset will be key here. Fans should focus on how the team adapts, rather than panic over a single roster change. Coaching decisions will also be interesting to watch. Andy Reid and Steve Spagnuolo will have to adjust defensive packages, manage snap counts, and ensure that younger players get the right exposure without being overwhelmed. Kevin Nolles' debut will be one of those small but telling moments. Even if he doesn't rack up stats, the trust the staff places in him can signal the team's philosophy on development versus short-term fixes. Here's your fan takeaway. Pay attention to rotational snaps, matchups, and how the team handles pressure situations on defense. Those small details will tell you if the Chiefs are ready to maintain their playoff window despite this setback. And remember, roster flexibility is one of the strengths that has kept them competitive year after year. Before we wrap up, a few quick engagement points. Are you more or less confident in the Chiefs' defense after this news? Drop more or less in the comments. If you haven't already, subscribe. Let's hit 6,000 subscribers together. Hit like if you think the Chiefs still have a shot at the Super Bowl this year.